we're just like, like we were just like mind blown, like, you know. I didn't mind telling that story because it was just so like, you know, so Gene.
I've been listening to this band for decades, really learning about this band and all that they stood for just as long. And so, needless to say, when tonight's special guest announced plans for a memoir, I got very, very excited. But enough rambling for me. I am beyond humbled and thrilled to welcome Serj Tankian of System of a Down to the show tonight. Serj, thank you so much for hanging, man.
Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate that. Wow, that you, it's a lot of pressure on me. I better not mess this up, huh?
I think you'll be all right, man. And listen, I know we're only going to be scratching the surface in this conversation tonight, but I have to say, I think in a lot of ways this seems like the definitive story about the band, at least from your perspective. You know, from your first show at the Roxy to hooking up with Rick Rubin to tripping on mushrooms at a Nine Inch Nails show, which I loved reading,
With Darren, yeah,
to
yeah,
telling the band they should find a new singer and replace you. I mean, like, man, there are just moments here that tell some pretty key times in the band's life. Were there stories that you left untold that you didn't feel comfortable sharing with the
yeah.
world? Yeah.
Of course, of course. There's many stories that are untold, and those stories might be other people's stories to tell with me in them, rather than my story to tell with them in them. And because that would, I don't want to divulge things to the public that someone may not want to, whether it's a system band member or someone from Metallica or another band I'm partying with or whatever, like it's not my place to tell someone else's story. So I was very careful with that because, there were a lot of fun, sensational rock star stories in there too. And I kind of called them because there's a few in there still that are fun, that I know that those involved are okay with. But most of them, I just felt like that's not why I'm writing this. That's not the whole point here. I'm not
Yeah.
going to, you know, sensationalize someone else for my benefit. It just didn't feel right.
So can I ask you, and I think you were incredibly fair but still honest in the story, and it was a short story. I mean, short enough that you as the author, could have easily glossed over it, as the reader could easily get, kind of just forget about it in the middle of all these other stories. But it was about the band meeting Gene Simmons
Oh yeah.
and and how he loved the album cover of your debut album, that iconic open hand jumping out of the cover.
Yeah.
And some fans may know, some may not. That's artwork, from an anti-fascist, anti-Nazi poster from
Yeah. John
uh,
Hartman.
1928. Yeah.
Mhm.
But Gene didn't seem too interested in the historic factor of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that I was surprised is actually funny because he is like a commercial icon, right? Like he could, he's all about branding. That's his thing, right? So yeah. So when he saw our first album cover, which is from John Hartman, Anti-Fascist Story, and uh, just so much power of protest. Like there's so much symbolism and messaging in that hand, that's political and whatnot. And of course he saw it as, he's like, wow, what would be great is if you put two on a t-shirt right where the girl's breasts are. And like we're just like, fuck, like we were just like mind blown, like, you know I didn't mind telling that story because it was just so like, you know so Gene, right, he'd
It
probably be
was,
proud
yeah.
of it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he probably
So
thinks, man, you guys really missed that opportunity.
yeah, yeah, you guys could have made some more cash on merch, man.
That's right, man. Listen, the last thing I'll say about the memoir, before I still got a few questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
As heavy as it is at times, and as much as you bare your soul and your wounds for everyone to read, it's ultimately, at least from my perspective, it feels like a call to action for the reader. As I'm reading it, you know, I felt this sort of urge to keep pushing forward, and I think this came out a few moments throughout the book, but man, it smacked me in the face near the end when you're talking about meeting the Dalai Lama. And this is what you write. You say, whatever you're fighting for, whatever struggle you're engaged in, putting positive energy out into the world is the only thing you can ever control. And I mean, like I underlined it, I started, I earmarked the page, everything. Because to me, I mean, that kind of sums it all up. As heavy and as dark as some of these stories are, as silly and fun as some of these stories are too with Gene, like that moment of whatever you're fighting for, whatever it is, like what you can control is the positive energy you put out in the world. I mean, for me, that's it, man.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, bro. You can only control yourself. You can't control results. You can't control outcomes. You can't control other things, other people. It's a basic tenet. And, you know, for me, the biggest struggle of being an activist along with an artist was how to be an activist with things that really anger you and piss you off, right? But not react negatively to them, and instead try to be constructive about those decisions, the decisions that you make. And ultimately, it's a results-driven kind of journey where you're just like, instead of getting angry, this is what I need to do. This is how I need to approach it. That's tough to learn. That takes years and a lot of like putting your ego back and whatnot to just not get angry and just go, okay, this is what we need to do to make this situation good, instead
Yeah.
of yelling and screaming. But yeah, thank
Yeah,
you for
man.
that.